Hi, I'm Pastor David from Declaration Church. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about something I came across in the book of Judges. And Judges is an interesting book of the Bible. If you've never read it, I encourage you to take a look at it because you'll find a lot of things that are pretty interesting in the book of Judges that if it were me and I were the one editing the Bible, this is one of those stories I would rather not have in there. In fact, the whole book of Judges is probably one I would exclude, simply because of the fact it has some situations in it that are pretty interesting that I think a lot of us would be surprised or will be surprised if you've never read it, are actually included in the Bible. There's some pretty graphic things there that are really things that were shocking to me the first time I came across them. But as I was reading through there, I came across a character that presents a very interesting picture of what it means to be a believer and a follower of God, that I believe contrasts what the church usually says about what it means and what it looks like when you're a follower of God. Because we paint this picture of faith that to me is a lot like Superman. And if you're a fan of Superman, forgive me for what I'm about to say and don't shut me off right away. But for me, growing up as I was looking at superheroes and kind of picking out my favorites, Superman to me always seemed like kind of a cop-out superhero. Because unless you have really part of his home planet, Kryptonite, around, he has zero weaknesses. He is absolutely impenetrable, and he cannot defeat Superman without Kryptonite around. He has amazing speed. He can fly. He can jump unbelievably high. He has the ability to live and survive in space without any kind of covering. He has laser vision. He has X-ray vision. He has super strength. He's really unstoppable unless you have Kryptonite around. And so in a way, since he has no weaknesses other than that one tiny little thing, he always seemed like kind of a cop-out superhero. And yet in that way, a lot of times the church today seems to paint a picture of people of faith in the same way, where they are people who have zero doubts. Really good Christians have no doubts. Everything is always based in faith. They have no doubts, no questions. Everything is amazing, and they just go through life believing and trusting God in every step without ever doubting or questioning. And so anytime I had doubts or questions, I really started to feel like maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I wasn't a very good Christian or even a Christian at all. And so coming across somebody like this person in Judges, his name is Gideon, really brings some comfort and shows and paints a different picture of what it means to be a person of faith and someone who's following God, someone who's walking in their calling and what God has asked them to do. And so this passage is in Judges, and it's Judges chapter 6, verses 36 through 40. It says, "Then Gideon said to God," now, he's speaking to God. This is prayer. And Gideon says, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." See, God's already spoken. He's already said, "I will save Israel by your hand." He's called him a mighty, valiant warrior in earlier passages. He says, "If you'll do what you've said." He's talking to God and he's saying, "If you will do it." Like there's doubt and question in his mind. And there absolutely is, as we'll see as we proceed through this passage. "As you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." So he acknowledges that God has already said, "I'm going to deliver Israel from their enemies by your hand, Gideon." And yet there are doubts, there are questions in Gideon's mind. Maybe not about God and his ability, but about whether he can really use him. When God says, "Oh, mighty man of valor," to Gideon when he first calls him, immediately Gideon says, "Well, I'm not even the greatest in my father's family. I'm the least in my father's family, and my father's family is the least in the smallest tribe of Israel. What do you mean, mighty man of valor?" So he questions his own ability, and he questions his calling. And verse 38, it says, "And it was so." So God hears the question, he hears the request and the test, and God answers. He makes it exactly the way that Gideon asked. "When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, 'Let not your anger burn against me, Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and on the ground let there be dew. Verse 40. Now here, he's already tested God once. God came through. He totally answered. And yet still there are questions and doubts. You would think that at this point, God would completely just forget it. You know what? I'll find somebody else. This is ridiculous. You don't believe that I can do what I've said I'm going to do. You don't believe that I've said what I'm going to, you don't even believe that what I said is true, or maybe that it's me who said it. But that's not the way that God reacts. In verse 40, and God did so that night. And it was dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground there was dew. What this says to me is that walking with God and having a relationship with him doesn't mean that you can't ever have any questions or doubts. It doesn't mean that if you have questions and doubts that you're rejected and that God is done with you. In fact, if we're honest with God and we bring those questions to him, this is really just a conversation. This is prayer. This is real prayer from Gideon. It's evidence of a true relationship. And God says, you know what? I'll meet you where you're at. You have those questions, I'm going to help you. And he walks with him through it. And those questions were slightly alleviated maybe, and yet there were still some doubts. And God says, you know what? I'm going to walk with you through this. And he does it again. In fact, as you continue through the next verses and continue to the end of the story of Gideon, you'll find that while God does deliver Israel through the hand of Gideon, there's another point at which Gideon's faith needs strengthening again, and there is doubt. And God doesn't even wait for him to make a request. He just simply says, hey, if you have any doubt in your mind, then this is what I want you to do. And when you do this, all the doubt will be gone. And Gideon goes and he does those things, and then he proceeds with God's plan. An amazing deliverance takes place. God walks with us when we have questions and doubts, and he's okay with them. He's comfortable with them because he knows who he is and he knows who we are. And he's totally comfortable with that, and he'll walk with us through that. So if you have doubts and questions, if you've been deconstructing your faith and you're just really having a hard time with the things that you've been taught over your lifetime, or the things that you thought you believed that now you're doubting and questioning, know this: God is okay with those things. And God wants to work with you through them and walk with you through them. I hope that's an encouragement to you today. If so, give this video a thumbs up, give it a like. And if you've watched a couple of these videos and you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that so that when a new video comes up, you're notified and you can check that out. Oh, and tell your friends about us if these videos are encouraging you so that they can find some encouragement as well. As always, I'm Pastor David, and I'm out.